This is Curious Brain Thoughts.
Hi, I'm Paul.
I'm Lou.
Welcome to Curious Brain Farts.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome. Lou, what the hell is a curious brain fart?
Great question, Paul. A curious brain fart, a bit like a normal fart, is an outbound release of curiosity about an idea that's in your brain.
Lovely.
We'd very much welcome your input. And if you've got anything to say or a topic you want us to be curious about, you can email us curiousbrainfarts@gmail.com. In today's episode, we are going to be talking about imposter syndrome. That is our curious brain fart for today. So I guess we should start by talking about what it is.
Curious.
I feel a fart coming on. What is it?
Well, imposter syndrome, it's interesting because it's everywhere. And from what I see and what I experience, I think it's present for everyone in different, levels and volumes and varieties and flavours. Because there are a number of different types of imposter syndrome.
Yes.
Not just the idea of, I've got a new job and I need to fake it till I make it, imposter syndrome. There's there's 5 structured varieties.
Can you remember what they are?
Let's have a try, shall we? So I remember, as soon as I run out, you can take over. So I remember the superhero,
Yes.
the soloist, the perfectionist.
Yes.
I'll let you have 2 more.
God, I can't remember. We'll have to come back. This is the work of Valerie Young. I do remember that much.
Yes.
And she called out. She did some really interesting research.
She came on over.
She did. Come on, Valerie. And when I read that, it was really interesting because I could see elements of most of them in myself, as well as I remember once I started a job and I, for ages, had this feeling that someone was going to tap me on the shoulder and go, right, Lou, off your fuck, love, because you shouldn't be here.
Harsh.
Yeah, but that's how I felt.
Yeah.
And so that was a lot of background stress. So I think the point about imposter syndrome is we all feel it to varying degrees at different times. And it's only a problem if it stops you, disables you somehow.
I found...
Have you had a quick look online for...
No, I've scoured my memory in the filing cabinet.
via Google?
No, not via Google. Jeez.
Other search engines are available.
Yes. So the others are the expert and the natural genius.
Ah.
So the perfectionist is primarily focused on how to try and get something done, and if there's a minor flaw in it, it's all rubbish.
Yeah.
And can't stand it. The expert needs to be like the knowledge version of the perfectionist. They focus on what. And if they don't know everything about everything, then they're a failure.
They can't enter the room unless they know it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the soloist is focused on who is doing stuff because you think you should be able to do it all. And then the natural genius is like, well, I'm a freaking legend. So they know everything about how and when, which is great because I can do everything first time perfectly. Great.
Yes.
And then you've got the superhuman or the superhero who measures competence based on how many roles you can juggle and be really good at. Interesting, isn't there? There's it's varieties of how, what, who.
And actually, I think that, I can only speak for myself, but I can see a blend of some of those things going on. So it's not like I'm wholly one or wholly another. I think of myself as a plate spinner. And, I definitely have had to learn to accept help.
Or join the circus.
Again, they actually did tap me on the shoulder and say, "Off your pop, love," because you're no good. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because, I think if it's true for all of us, and that's okay, and it's we're all just people at the end of the day, then what do we do about it? How do we deal with it? Because maybe that's different for everyone. I don't know.
I think it is different for everybody, just like our ingredients for imposter syndrome can show up differently.
Yeah.
It's good, like you, I can resonate with all of them. And I see the perfectionist, the soloist, sometimes the expert, definitely the superhuman, and depending on the context, is it in work, is it at home, is it as a parent, or whatever, it's interesting how it can show up. And I think one of the things that I try to do is just first of all be mindful.
Yeah. I think that's really interesting, because I was having a conversation yesterday with somebody who was talking about the act of noticing, and you don't need to do anything else other than notice. It's not like, so I think again, I can only talk for myself, but I put a lot of pressure on myself to know an answer in inverted commas. But to your point, being mindful of it, noticing it, is where surely all of it has to start.
Yeah. And that noticing, as the podcast suggests, is nothing to do with judging it and going, wow, look at that. You're trying to be the perfectionist, you idiot. It's going, oh, interesting. You appear to be showing up trying to be a perfectionist. Why is that?
Because at the root of the imposter syndrome, however it shows up, is a sense of insecurity or, not feeling good enough in some way for the context or situation that you're in.
And it can also be born from coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
So to the point around insecurity or whatever, keeping yourself safe. I'm valued when I know the most about something. I am valued when I can do all the juggling of all the things.
So it goes quite deep, actually, into who we think we actually are and the value that we have. So I think curiosity for sure, noticing and being curious, also having real compassion for ourselves, because this isn't as easy as it might sound to manage.
Yes. Yeah. I was just thinking about, other contexts. Even I'm in a couple of bands. I play music. I'm a drummer, percussionist. Don't hold that against me. I also do the sound engineering and stuff. And, not being able to get the song exactly right. Not being able to get the sound exactly right. And then going, oh, do I really know what I'm doing? Because I bet there's someone else out there who knows a lot more than me about this thing, and therefore, I just see that it appears in so many different ways, and it depends on how much, one, I notice it, and two, I talk back to it.
Yeah. And the other thing for me that's going through my head is that Aesop's fable about a bundle of sticks. Do you know it? It's a great one. It's one of Aesop's best fables.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's the start of a den building manual. I need a bunch of sticks.
Listen, do you want to know about it or not?
I'd love to.
You sound really
no, I can't wait to hear it.
Authentically genuine about it.
No, I'm totally curious. Tell me more.
Here it comes. So this is a man who's got a group of kids and they're really argumentative, and the man is not going to live very much longer, and he gets all of his children together and he gives each of them one stick and he tells them to break it, and they do easily. And they're like, yeah, whatever, next. And then he gives each of them a bundle of sticks and tells them now break the bundle. And of course they can't do it, even though the sticks are all of the same, you know, weight and all that of the previous. So the point
However
being,
you measure sticks. Yeah.
I know, I was thinking, how does one girth? I don't know. Anyway,
Circumference.
Circumference. The point being, you're stronger if there's more than one. So he's saying to his children, you're stronger together. For me, with imposter syndrome, there's something around saying, just me by myself, I could be broken by that. But if I have somebody else or other things in my bundle, and you're saying talking back is one of the things, for me, talking to somebody else about it, I find really helpful. You know, I might talk to you about it. I might say, hey, Paul, I'm noticing this is really, you know, jangling for me today. And I don't need you to have any solutions. I just want you to listen to me.
Yeah.
I might ask you what your perspective is. Let's say we've done a meeting or come out of a piece of facilitation or something, and I think, oh, flipping heck. You know, and my imposter syndrome's going, oh, that was a bit rubbish. You didn't do that quite right. And I might ask for your opinion, your perspective. So having somebody to support, having somebody to give you a different perspective, for me, that's helpful.
It's interesting.
And it's not easy. If this was easy, it wouldn't be a thing. If this was easy, everybody would be like, yeah, whatever.
The other thing I wonder a lot is how much people even recognise it.
I think we're really used to it, in all honesty. It's a familiar thing, isn't it? We might not even know it.
Well, that's, yeah.
Name it.
Yeah. That's what I mean, you know. Yeah, it's interesting.
And that's why the first step on the journey is noticing, is calling it by its name. And actually, I think sometimes it's helpful. So if it's not, you know, it can, for me, be a bit of a motivator. You know, I want to get this right. I want to really give it my everything. It can be a source of focus if it's not too much. If it's only a 3 or a 4 on a scale of 1 to 10, that might be okay for me.
And I guess that's the difference between imposter syndrome and not, and using stress or things like that to help motivate you.
It's helpful pressure.
Yeah, exactly.
And imposter syndrome is much further up the scale.
Yeah, yeah.
So by definition, it's disabling. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think it'd be called something else. Because it doesn't sound, that sounds deficit anyway. Imposter syndrome. It doesn't sound something that's that people want, despite we all have it.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe the name isn't actually very helpful. Because it's you've got a syndrome. You've got to go to doctors and get some cream for that.
Isn't there that TV programme called Imposters?
Don't know.
Yeah. It's quite interesting.
I don't know. I can't comment because I do not know.
You have said a few times.
Yeah, well, so move on. Next.
Thank you.
Best wishes. Well, I think the bottom line is...
The reason why I mention it is because there is an awful lot of imposter syndrome at play. It's very interesting. There's, I think it was the BBC that did it, because we're in the United Kingdom. And it was very interesting because the premise of the game is there's however many people, let's say 20, and it lasts, I don't know, a week or whatever. They drag it out, obviously, with all the edits and everything else. And the idea is that, like, initially 2 people are blind nominated by the host as traitors. So I can't think what the rest of the people are called anyway. And the traitors are able to bump people off, sort of like in a Monopoly kind of way. You know, they can inverted commas kill people at night. They don't do anything. They just receive a letter in the morning to say you've been offed. And they can also recruit other traitors. And the idea being is that you don't want to be identified as a traitor, because if you are, you get voted off, and at the end of it is loads of money. So the idea, that's the incentive for you to keep up this thing. And it's really interesting seeing the emotional load of people. Those who aren't traitors are worrying about whether they're going to be got that evening or not.
Mm-hmm.
Those who are traitors are really exhausted. The emotional labour is very, very high, because there is this huge dissonance between they're getting close to people so that they're not made suspicious of, and then they're having to bump them off. And it's very, very interesting to see this imposter syndrome going, because some people go, yeah, I could definitely be a traitor, I'd be well good at that. And it turns out actually they're not that great at it, and you do have to spin a lot of plates, and you've got I just thought, it just came to me, and it's called traitors, not imposters. That's why. That was good.
Call it by its name / a completely different name. Amazing.
Have you heard of imposters?
That well-done TV programme.
They'll be making that next year, you watch.
But it's interesting because I think we like watching TV which puts people through an emotional ringer.
Yeah.
Which I don't fully understand, and I also watch. Not lots of, but some of. And that's, so we kind of get some kind of prurient delight out of seeing other people do that, but we don't, obviously, it's uncomfortable, and therefore we don't want it for ourselves. And I don't know, I just think, really and truly, imposter syndrome, well, what we've basically said is notice it, the end.
Yeah.
Because beyond that is a journey of all sorts of different things. But it will feel uncomfortable. It will feel, a source of anxiety or stress or both. You might feel it in your body. You probably will feel it in your body. And it's just tuning in layers to what that is like for you.
And it's also not necessarily big things or one big constant thing.
No, indeed.
Like you were talking about in a meeting. You might be in a meeting and all of a sudden go, why did I say that? What did I do that for? Because I didn't show up as the perfect expert. So I didn't know enough about how and what.
Yes.
Oh, balderdash.
Yes. Or I'm sat in this meeting and I need to say the thing. So I don't open my gob unless I feel I can say the thing. I mean, opening my gob's never really been much of a challenge for me.
Closing it.
One could argue I've got verbal diarrhea. However...
Is that what that smell is?
It's not my brain farts, it's my verbal diarrhea. There are... And I think we can all relate to that. You get in your own head and you start going, oh, okay. Mm-hmm. So just noticing it in the moment, going, oh, I can see that that's happening. Oh, okay. It gives you a slight distance. You step back ever so slightly, ever so slightly. And it's possibly in that gap. Sometimes, maybe, sometimes not, that you might be able to choose something for yourself.
The other thing as well is that it's not, like with most things, it's only about the here and now. It's not about everything. So, thinking about how it shows up for me sometimes, I can be like hauling myself over the coals over things that have happened years ago, even tiny things. And that actually no longer serves me. And the thing that is important is the here and now. So even if I think about something very small, again, going back to the meeting thing, and I'm feeling inadequate in a meeting for whatever reason, well, that's only up until the point when I choose to stop feeling inadequate. It's not everything behind me and everything in front of me. It's in that moment. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I do. It's really, really interesting because imposter syndrome can feel like it's everything, can't it?
Yeah.
But to say, and maybe that's part of that talking back, saying, well, this is about this specific moment in time only.
Mm-hmm.
And in this moment, I have a choice about whether I continue to feel like this or whether I do something else.
Do you know what's I've just thought about is how a lot of these things come across as deficit. So I'm wondering, where this stuff comes from, because we can spend a lot of time being curious about labelling the things that are negative or of deficit or whatever else. So pay attention to it, notice it, ...
Yeah, it's interesting.
What about all the other things? So for that brief moment, I felt inadequate in that meeting.
Yeah.
That brief moment could have been a minute, an hour, it doesn't matter. It is a brief moment, and yet that will stay with me for goodness knows how long. And I'm discarding everything else that's going on around me. Literally everything. I find it fascinating how conditioned we are. Maybe it's not all of us. I certainly feel like I push hard against the... I've forgotten the word again, beginning with D.
Deficit.
I push hard against that because otherwise I feel like my default position is deficit.
It is interesting because I think that there are... I can't remember the exact statistic, but if you...
7 out of 10 statistics are made up anyway.
Right, so okay, let's make something up. But it's about it's in this general line of country. If something is positive, there's a positive remark about you, that is nowhere near as sticky as a negative remark about you.
It's 7 to 1, I think.
Something like that. It's
7
high.
positives to 1 negative.
In order just to balance things, not to push them into the positive, just to maintain balance. And so that's why something like imposter syndrome is so powerful, because it's us talking to ourselves negatively. We're primed to really hold on to that. It's barbed, isn't it? It sticks in and it stays there. And so that it's no surprise that something small that happened a long time ago, you're still thinking about it because it feeds into that narrative. The perfectionist, the expert, whatever it is. And so maybe it's just act of noticing, stepping back a bit. And you're saying it's situational, and it is. Context is king. And so, I've got no words of wisdom here. All I'm thinking is to try and depersonalize it, to view it as a thing that's moving through. It's transient. This too shall pass. And to view it as an opportunity to notice where you're choosing to get in your own way. Because often, I don't know about you, but when I'm coaching people and they are showing up with some imposter syndrome stuff, and I ask them, what's the evidence that you have? Not your thoughts and feelings.
Question,
What actual objective evidence do you have, like in your performance review, comments from colleagues? And they go, well,
there isn't any.
I don't have... Yeah, exactly. There isn't any. Right, okay. So then it becomes a choice that you're making.
That's right.
And that's really actually very powerful, because if you're making the choice, you can choose something else. That's easy to say and more difficult to do. But it's not like that's a perception that's widely held. Often, typically, it's something we're doing to ourselves.
Yeah, that is a very common theme. And what's interesting about that question, I suppose, is that it is easier for someone else to ask you than you ask yourself. Because I can quite easily dismiss questions like that
Yeah.
from even surfacing.
Yeah.
Whereas if someone else asks it to me, I can't avoid it because they've asked me the question. I can give a roundabout answer, but I can't avoid it.
Because there's some dissonance in your own head if you've got the imposter syndrome talk track going, and then you're trying to set another one going, which is what's your evidence, etc. That, like you say, you need another stick in your bundle o' sticks at that moment.
Yeah. And, you touch on coaching. That can be something that's very, very powerful for supporting with that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that when I think about, how, for example, we work together, then I think we coach each other and don't necessarily call it that. And it's not a formal thing. It's an approach that we have in how we show up. And it is really helpful to formally call it out and say, this is a space I'm going to intentionally create for myself where I can work through some of the things which I'm finding tricky. And we don't need it all day, every day, but you do know when you need it. So if something like imposter syndrome it's
kind of like the loo.
You need it
You
when
know
you need it.
You know when you need it.
And you probably know where it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Or if not, you ask.
Yeah, precisely.
Donde está el baño?
Sí, por favor. Etc. En español. So, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because, like we were talking about earlier, people, or maybe we weren't, maybe that was another conversation I was having with someone today. People typically know what it is they need to do, what it is they need. The challenge is in naming it and identifying it. And I find that interesting when you use the needing the loo analogy, because obviously you get this sensation in your body, you get these signals in your brain that says something's, right, okay, need the loo. Number one, number two. I only said it because it rhymes. And
so puerile, honestly.
And, well, it is called curious brain farts. I mean,
working in these circumstances, everyone. Have pity.
Have pity. She says, bah. So I do find it interesting that we're not very good at naming some of these things, because all the way back to about 3 days ago when we started talking, the comment about because it's a constant. So it's not like I don't need the loo, and then then I go, actually now I do, because imposter syndrome is there as a constant, and the volume could be very quiet, and then suddenly it goes bip and pops up, and we're kind of used to it. It's like, I've just got to stretch a minute, or do you know what I mean? So therefore, getting additional support for ourselves isn't necessarily the top of our list of things to do. It's more like, just get on with it.
We're used to the discomfort.
Yeah. That's what I like about working with someone who is trying to hold that space. That I can wriggle about and be all uncomfortable and everything else, and there is this great space for someone to be objective and curious. It's lovely. Lovely.
Sorry about the accents.
Yeah. Whatever.
Other accents are available. Amazing.
You'll have to keep listening to see if there's more that pop out.
So if we're going to summarise this and wrap this up, what we're saying is notice it. Get more sticks in your bundle if that's what you need. And I think
other jobs are available.
I think that's crystal clear.
Yeah. Yeah, it's noticing it. It's talking back to it or talking to someone, and the sticks thing being there's other ways in which you can combat this stuff.
Yeah.
Getting other support, you can also look for this evidence. there's lots of sticks that you can add
There are.
to strengthen things.
But, you are not alone.
What?
Is the point. We all feel it. It's part of everyone's lived experience to a greater or lesser extent. Paul's just absolutely
I'm super comfortable
being
Lou.
a spanner on this chair that he's on. So yeah, the point is you're not alone. We all feel it, and there we will leave it.
Nice bit of rhyming.
Right, you're welcome.
Yeah, I mean, Boomtown.
Mic drop.
Please don't. They're expensive.
See you next time, everyone.
Ta-ra.
Curious Brain Thoughts.